From the KPIX5 newsroom, this is Bay Area Night Beat on KBCW.
I'm Kenny Choi at SFO. Asiana Airlines told to suspend one of its heavily used routes. We'll tell you what that means for passengers.
A deadly crash at SFO more than 6 years ago will impact passengers traveling through the Bay Area's busiest airport. Good evening, I'm Juliette Goodrich.
And I'm Brian Hackney. In a rare kind of punishment, Asiana Airlines will be forced to shut down its route from the busy airport to Korea for 45 days. Night Beat's Kenny Choi is at SFO with the details.
Brian and Juliette, the struggling airline tried to appeal this punishment for years, but the Supreme Court in South Korea just recently upheld this ban. It will hurt the airline, which is facing loads of debt, but could ultimately hurt the passengers as well. For Ilo Bedashana, who drove all the way from Tracy to SFO Airport to send his mother-in-law off to Korea for a special trip, spending hundreds of dollars for a ticket isn't easy.
For us to go over there, we work for everything we earn, and every penny makes a difference in these times.
The airline will suspend its route starting March 3rd till April 16th next year. Asiana Airlines says the punishment will cost $9.3 million in lost sales. But that could ultimately hurt families like Ilo's, who rely on more competition among airlines.
Looking at the prices in comparison to United and everything else, Asiana had a good price, so that's why we purchased our ticket with them.
South Korean officials plan to ask competing airlines to use larger airplanes during the suspension. But for customers, that's still no guarantee they won't get hurt.
To send my mother-in-law over and I have to do the price shopping for her, it's definitely a challenge, looking for those good bargains.
In addition to the suspension, in a separate case 2 years ago, Asiana Airlines agreed to pay the city of San Francisco $3.5 million for airport repairs, as well as to cover legal costs. At SFO, Kenny Choi for the Night Beat.
A cloudy night across the Bay Area following a cloudy day. Brian has more on the clouds that gave us rain and what tomorrow's going to look like.
Well, there was a little bit of rain, not a heck of a lot, but it certainly was drizzle, light rain, parts of the North Bay. The front fizzles as it heads south, though. It'll clear up overnight, be a little bit breezy in the wake of what was a weak cold front that pressed south over the Bay Area today. In terms of totals, not much. Bodega Bay about 0.05 of an inch, Santa Rosa up to 0.02 of an inch. Anemic front will head south. It'll be a bit breezy overnight. And then tomorrow, here comes the sun. Looks like it'll be in the mid-80s by midweek. We'll have all the details when we cover the forecast. But first, here's Jules.
Well, San Francisco Mayor London Breed is facing criticism tonight for swearing in an interim district attorney just weeks before local elections. Mayor Breed swore in Susie Loftus as the interim district attorney this morning. She then took off without taking questions from reporters. Critics say the mayor wants to tip the scale and give Loftus an unfair advantage over 3 other candidates running for the DA position on November 5th.
If you're proud of something and you think you've done the right thing, you don't need to hide it.
People want a district attorney that's accountable to them, not to the mayor.
I think that there is some backlash. There is something to be paid for this.
The mayor says she needs a partner to work with in the DA's office. If it had not been for the mayor's appointment, the upcoming election would have marked the first open seat race for the DA post in 100 years.
Well, California's unemployment rate is now at a record low. State officials say in the last month the unemployment rate dropped to 4%, and that compares to 4.1% in August. California has gained nearly 4 million jobs since February 2010. Tonight, there is an uncertain fate for a massive Bay Area quarry because the owner of the San Rafael Rock Quarry applied for a 20-year mining extension with Marin County. Quarry officials say the production there has slowed over the past decade, and to remove more than 17 million tons of rock, they're going to need more time. And neighbors say that's not what they were expecting.
Homes were built in close proximity to this quarry because the prior owners had indicated that it was going to close. That never happened.
We're still complying with the 172 conditions that are there in place to make sure that we mitigate any impacts to our neighbors.
The application for the 20-year extension is now being reviewed by the county. It'll eventually receive a hearing before the Marin Board of Supervisors.
Well, today people in Oakland are marking anniversaries for a deadly firestorm and for the Oakland Fire Department's origins of 150 years ago. The Oakland Hills Fire began on this date in 1991 and went on for 3 days. 25 people were killed, 150 injured. The fire destroyed nearly 3,300 homes. Today's ceremony happened at the Gateway Memorial Gardens Exhibition Center near the spot where the fire started. Fire department and community leaders spoke at the ceremony, and nearby the department had its new wildfire-specific fire engines on display. The current fire chief says that since the 1991 disaster, Oakland has made lots of upgrades in training, equipment, and vegetation management.
I think being prepared is the primary concern. Doing everything you can to draw down risk, doing everything you can to ensure that your property is safe. Doing everything you can simultaneously to ensure that you have the ability to evacuate quickly.
Members of the Oakland Fire Safe Council were also on hand today. They are dedicated to motivating their fellow residents to prepare for fires and to prevent them from happening in the first place.
New images show a stunning rescue at the Antioch Marina. Police say that car rolled down a ramp and into the water. Driver trapped inside, struggling to hold his head above water. You can see this is the car under the water. The police were able to cut open the top of the car, opened the driver's door far enough to get the man out. He was rushed to the hospital. I don't know how he's doing tonight. There have been new leads and evidence that have reopened an East Bay cold case. Sketches were recently released by the Concord police. The 4 men identified are thought to have been in the area where a man was shot to death 4 years ago. 20-year-old Eric Cruz died on September 12th back in 2015. He was shot in the courtyard of the Pine Meadows Apartments near Monument Boulevard in Concord. No arrests have been made since then. Concord police is asking anyone who recognizes the men in the sketches to give them a call. Witnesses can remain anonymous.
We are getting a look at the moments a high school football coach and former assistant coach for the 49ers stopped a potential school shooter. But as reporter Emily Burris shows us, it's what he did next that has everyone talking.
In a fraction of a second, I analyzed everything really fast. I saw the look in his face, look in his eyes, looked at the gun. I realized it was a real gun, and then my instincts just took over.
A gun grab ending in an emotional embrace. For the first time, we're getting an inside look at the moments Coach Keenan Lowe, a security guard at Parkrose High School, confronted a student armed and in crisis.
I can see him coming into the room with just a gun in his hand. It was terrifying. It was truly terrifying.
We all hid. We hid like under clothes and stuff too, just in case anything would happen.
Students that day scared. Parents realizing their worst fears as the school went into lockdown.
None of us knew if we were going to make it out alive.
But everyone made it out safely, and now we're seeing just how incredibly timed it all was. Coach Lowe had been called to the Fine Arts Building to get a student. What he didn't know was that just moments before, that student, Angel Granados Diaz, snuck a shotgun inside. The two almost meeting in the hallway.
I walk in there, I get to the classroom, I ask the teacher, is the student here?
He was just steps behind, the weapon now tucked under his coat.
The door opens, and I'm within arm's length of the door. There's a kid with a gun, a shotgun. I lunged for the gun, put 2 hands on the gun, and he had his 2 hands on the gun, and obviously the students are, running out of the classroom and screaming.
Lowe says running never crossed his mind. He handed the gun off to another teacher, then did something unexpected, wrapping Granados Diaz up in a hug. As students ran to safety and police rushed to the scene, he remained focused on the teen in front of him.
I felt compassion for him, and a lot of times, especially when you're young, you don't realize what you're doing until it's over.
Last week, the teen pleaded guilty to gun charges in a deal avoiding jail time. Investigators say he'd made suicidal statements and was struggling with mental health issues. The gun was loaded with just 1 round. Lowe says love is what brought him to coach and work at Parkrose. Love for his students, his kids.
He broke down, and I just wanted to let him know that I was there for him. I told him I was there to save him. I was there for a reason. And that, this is a life worth living.
That was Emily Burris reporting. The teenager is now serving a 36-month probation sentence.
CHP officer has life-threatening injuries after being hit by a suspected drunk driver. Happened shortly after 1 in the morning today on Highway 99 north of Yuba City in Sutter County. The CHP said the officer was directing traffic where railroad crossing gates were stuck in the down position. Then a 21-year-old man in an SUV barreled through the crossing, hit the officer that was then airlifted to UC Davis Medical Center.
Major life-threatening injuries. He's currently critical but stable and is currently being evaluated by medical staff here.
The injured officer's partner chased down the driver and arrested him. The suspect, a student at Cal State Chico, has been booked into jail on suspicion of DUI and resisting arrest.
Well, California is state, but the 2020 candidate who has raised the most money over the last few months may surprise you. Trump raised nearly $11 million from California donors, pitching in $200 or more from July into September. And that's according to a recent analysis from the LA Times. It's more than the top 4 Democrats combined, with Harris, Sanders, Buttigieg, and Biden raising just under $10 million combined. The Times found that the bulk of the president's donations are coming from Southern California, but urban and rural areas across the state are also contributing. Tonight, President Trump is scrapping a plan to hold the next G7 conference at his own resort. The White House said earlier this week that the meeting next June would happen at the Trump National Doral in Miami. Then critics, including some Republicans in Congress, said it was a bad idea. Well, tonight, Mr. Trump tweeted that it's off the table. He says the administration will begin looking for another site immediately.
Tonight, Syrian Kurdish fighters say that they plan to withdraw from a border area in accordance with a U.S. brokered ceasefire. A senior official with the Syrian Democratic Forces says if Turkey allows a full evacuation tomorrow from a besieged town, the SDF will move away from the border. This is the first time the Kurdish group has talked publicly about a withdrawal. They also say that they are coordinating their pullback with American officials.
Well, your daily glass of vino could soon be in trouble. Coming up, how local vineyards are working to make sure climate change doesn't keep your wine cabinet empty.
Plus, she's banned from a cruise ship for life because of a selfie. It happened, and we have the details.